The elderly man ordering his usual double espresso had no idea that the cheerful barista grinding his beans had memorized every line of his face from war crimes. Tribunals 23 years ago. Mila Kovač smiled warmly as she worked the gleaming chrome machine, her movements fluid and practiced, while internally cataloging the subtle changes time had wrought on Dragan Marić's features. The scar above his left eyebrow was new, probably from a fall, given his age. The wedding ring was gone, suggesting his wife had finally died or divorced him. But those pale gray eyes were unmistakable, the same ones that had stared coldly as he ordered the execution of 237 Bosnian civilians in the summer of 1999. If you like the story, please subscribe to my channel. "Beautiful morning, isn't it, Mr. Henderson?" she said in perfect, unaccented English, using the name from the false passport he'd been living under for 2 decades. Steam hissed from the espresso machine, covering the slight tremor in her voice. Grunted his agreement, counting out exact change with arthritis-gnarled fingers that had once pulled triggers without hesitation. Mila accepted the coins, their hands briefly touching, and felt the familiar cold rage settle in her chest like ice water. She'd been serving him coffee for 6 months now, building trust, establishing routine, waiting for the perfect moment. "Have a wonderful day," she called out as he shuffled toward his usual corner table, the same spot he'd claimed every Tuesday and Friday morning since she'd started working at Grind Coffee on East 23rd Street. He'd chosen it strategically, she knew, back to the wall, clear view of both entrances. Old habits dying hard even in retirement. Today would be different, though. Today, after 847 days of hunting him across 3 continents, Dragan Marić would finally face justice. The transformation from Mila Kovač, war crimes investigator, to Mila, friendly neighborhood barista, had taken 6 months of preparation. She'd studied coffee culture with the same intensity she once applied to forensic evidence, learning to distinguish between Ethiopian Yirgacheffe and Guatemalan Huetenango by scent alone. Her small apartment above the coffee shop was a careful study in constructed normalcy cookbook she never used. Romance novels with dog-eared pages, photos of a fabricated family vacation to Yellowstone. The real Mila lived in a locked file cabinet behind these props. 17 different identities across 4 continents, each with meticulously crafted backstories, bank accounts, and social media presence going back years. She spoke 17 languages fluently, not counting the regional dialects, and could shift accents like changing clothes. Today she was Mila Kovač, 28 years old, originally from Croatia, but raised in Chicago after her parents immigrated. When she was 7, the story had enough truth to feel authentic under casual scrutiny. At precisely 8:47 a.m., her target finished his espresso and left, following the same route he'd taken for months. Mila waited exactly 3 minutes before stepping into the back room where her coworker Jenny was organizing supplies. "I need to step out for a doctor's appointment," she said, untying her apron. "Cover for me?" Jenny, 19 and perpetually distracted by her phone, barely looked up. "Sure, whatever. Dr. Martinez again. Routine checkup." The lie came easily. There was no Dr. Martinez, just like there was no night school where Mila supposedly took accounting classes on Thursdays. Her real education had come from the International Criminal Tribunal, Interpol training facilities, and 2 years embedded with war crimes investigators in the Balkans. She slipped out the back entrance and walked 3 blocks to where she'd parked her Honda Civic, chosen for its anonymity. The tracking device she'd planted on Marić's 2018 Toyota Camry showed he was heading towards Central Park, following his Tuesday routine. She'd mapped every variation of his movements: grocery store on Wednesdays, organic produce; low sodium everything; library on Saturdays, mystery novels and newspapers from Serbia; doctor appointments on the 2nd Monday of each month; cardiologist. Suggesting his ticker wasn't what it used to be, but today he was deviating, Mila frowned at the GPS, dot moving east instead of north. In 6 months of surveillance, Dragan Marić had never deviated from routine without reason. She started the engine and pulled into traffic, maintaining a 4-car distance. Her father had taught her to tail suspects when she was 16, back when she thought she'd follow him into local police work in suburban Pittsburgh, before she learned about Bosnia, before she discovered what had really happened to her grandmother's family. The Toyota was heading toward the Upper East Side, an area Marić had visited only twice in her surveillance record, both times for medical appointments. Mila's pulse quickened. Change in pattern meant something was happening. In her experience, it usually meant flight. She reached into her glove compartment and checked her Glock 19 legal carry permit under the name Mila Kovač, just another paranoid city dweller. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was carrying American papers to hunt a Serbian war criminal in the heart of Manhattan. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The Wolf knows he's being hunted." Mila's blood chilled. Only 5 people in the world knew her current location and target. 3 were dead. One was her handler at the International Criminal Court, who communicated only through encrypted channels. The 5th was supposed to be in protective custody in The Hague. She pulled over, hands shaking slightly as she typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who wants Marić dead as much as you do. Park Lexington 78th. Come alone." Every instinct screamed trap, but Mila had been hunting ghosts for 5 years. Real information was rare, and if someone else had found Marić, she needed to know who and why. She made a U-turn and headed toward the rendezvous, checking her mirrors obsessively. The coffee shop felt like a lifetime ago, though barely an hour had passed. She wondered if Jenny had noticed her absence yet, if the regular customers were complaining about the wait. The constructed life of Mila the barista was so carefully built, so perfectly normal. It would be a shame to burn it all down, but some ghosts were worth sacrificing everything to catch. The woman waiting at the designated corner looked nothing like what Mila had expected. Mid-50s, expensive coat, designer handbag. She could have been any upper-class New Yorker running errands. Only her eyes gave her away. The same 1,000-yard stare Mila had seen in refugee camps and war tribunals. "Amela Begović," the woman said without preamble. "Sarajevo, 1999. You're hunting the man who killed my family." Mila felt the pieces clicking into place. Begović, she remembered the name from the tribunal files, survivor testimony. 3 children, and a husband murdered in the Trebinje massacre. The woman had identified Dragan Marić from photographs but had been too traumatized to testify effectively. "How did you find me?" Mila asked. "The same way you found him. Patience, planning, and a very good memory for faces." Amela's English was precise, accented but confident. "I've been watching him for 8 months, watching you for 6. Why now?" "Because he's leaving. Tonight. Passport in the name of David Henderson. First-class ticket to São Paulo. From there, who knows? Maybe Argentina, maybe Paraguay. Somewhere without extradition treaties." The bottom dropped out of Mila's stomach. 847 days of work, gone. She'd been so careful, so patient. How had she missed this? "How do you know?" she demanded. "I work at the travel agency." Amela's smile was bitter. 20 years I've been cleaning offices, serving coffee, being invisible. You think you're the only one who learned to hide in plain sight?" Mila studied the older woman's face, looking for deception. Finding none, she made a decision that would change everything. "We need to talk, properly, somewhere safe. My apartment is 6 blocks away, but first," Amela held up a manila envelope. "Everything I have on him. Travel plans, banking information, contacts. Consider it a down payment." "For what?" "Partnership. You have the skills and the legal authority. I have 20 years of rage and nothing left to lose." Together, we make sure Dragan Marić never disappears again." Mila looked at the envelope, then at the woman offering it. In 5 years of hunting war criminals, she'd always worked alone. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, and partners were liabilities. But time was running out, and Amela Begović had just handed her intelligence she would have needed months to gather. "1 hour," she said, taking the envelope. "Then we decide." As they walked toward Amela's apartment, Mila felt the careful structure of her investigation shifting. The solitary hunt was becoming something larger, more dangerous, more personal. Behind them, neither woman noticed the man in the gray coat who'd been following at a discreet distance, or the way he spoke quietly into his phone as they turned the corner. Amela's apartment was a study in controlled obsession. The walls were covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, maps, and timelines, a murder board that would have made any FBI profiler proud. At the center of it all was an enlarged photograph of Dragan Marić from his army days, circled in red marker. "Jesus," Mila breathed, taking in the scope of the investigation. 23 years, Amela said, setting teacups on a small table. "That's how long I've been building this. Learning about him, his associates, his habits. Did you know he has a daughter in Berlin? Married, named Schmidt. 2 children of her own. She sends him birthday cards every year." Mila moved closer to examine the wall. Bank statements, travel records, medical appointments. It was more comprehensive than anything the ICC had compiled. "This is incredible work. Why haven't you turned this over to authorities?" "Which authorities?" Amela's laugh was hollow. "The ICC, who let him slip away in 2009. Interpol, who had him in custody in Budapest and released him on a technicality. The Serbian government, who claim he died in a car accident in 2012. She pointed to a section of the wall covered with official letterheads. "I've tried them all. Filed reports, submitted evidence, testified at hearings. Do you know what they tell me? Thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Begović. We'll be in touch." And then nothing. Mila understood. She joined the ICC as an idealistic 25-year-old, believing in justice through proper channels. It had taken her 3 years to realize that proper channels had cracks wide enough for war criminals to slip through forever. "So you decided to take matters into your own hands." "I decided to find someone who could take matters into their own hands." Amela sat down heavily. "I'm 56 years old, Ms. Kovač. I work nights cleaning office buildings and spend my days hunting a ghost. I'm tired. But I won't let him disappear again." The use of her real name made Mila tense. "How long have you known?" "Since your second day at the coffee shop." "You're very good, but you made one mistake. You speak Serbian without an accent when you're concentrating. Most Americans can't even pronounce Bosniak correctly." Mila cursed silently. It was a rookie mistake, the kind that got people killed in her line of work. She was getting sloppy, too comfortable in her cover identity. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Help me get close to him, close enough for this." Amela opened a drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder. A confession. His own words, admitting what he did. Something concrete enough that even the bureaucrats can't ignore. That's assuming he'll confess. He will. When he realizes he has no other choice. Mila studied the older woman's face. There was something she wasn't saying, a piece of the plan. Being held back. "What aren't you telling me?" Amela was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to a different section of the wall, covered with medical documents and prescriptions. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4, 6 months, maybe 8 if I'm lucky. The revelation hit Mila like a physical blow. AOA ... Don't. I don't want pity, I want justice. For my family, for all the families. For the children who never grew up because of men like Dragan Marić. She turned back to face Mila directly. "I'm going to confront him tonight, with or without your help." With you, there's a chance we both survive and he faces trial. Without you, I guarantee he'll confess, but only one of us will be alive to hear it. The apartment fell silent except for the distant sounds of traffic. Mila looked at the wall of evidence, at 23 years of patient investigation, at a woman who had nothing left except the need to see justice done. "What time is his flight?" she asked. 11-40 p.m. JFK. "Security? None that I've identified. He's been living clean, staying invisible. The passport is good enough to fool casual inspection." Mila checked her watch. 3:15 p.m. 7.5 hours to plan and execute an operation that would either end with a war criminal in custody or two women dead in a confrontation with a man who'd killed hundreds. "I'll need equipment. Communications, backup identity papers, exit strategy. I have equipment. 20 years of planning, remember?" Amela opened another drawer, revealing enough surveillance gear to stock a private investigation firm. "The question is, are you willing to cross the line from investigator to vigilante?" Mila thought of Dragan Marić's face across the counter that morning, the casual way he'd accepted his coffee from someone whose grandmother had died because of his orders. She thought of all the other faces in her files, all the criminals who'd slipped away through legal technicalities and bureaucratic failures. "I crossed that line the day I took this job," she said. "Let's go catch a war criminal." By 4 p.m., they had a plan. By 5, they were questioning whether it would work. By 6, Mila was certain they were walking into a trap that would get them both killed. The problem was timing. Marić's flight departed at 11:40 p.m., which meant he'd leave his apartment around 9:30 to account for international departure procedures. That gave them a 3-hour window to intercept him, extract a confession, and decide what to do with a man who'd spent 23 years evading justice. "He'll take the same route to JFK he used for his medical appointments," Amela said, pointing to a map spread across her kitchen table. "East side access to the Queensboro Bridge, then the Van Wyck Expressway. Predictable." "Predictable is good," Mila agreed, but her instincts were screaming warnings. "What bothers me is the timing. Why tonight? What changed?" Amela shrugged. "Maybe he got spooked. Maybe his visa situation changed. Maybe he just decided it was time to move on. Or maybe someone warned him." Mila voiced the fear that had been growing since she'd received the anonymous text. "How many people knew about your investigation?" "No one. I worked alone, just like you." "Then how did someone know I was hunting him? How did they know to send me that text at exactly the right moment?" The question hung in the air between them. Mila had learned to trust her paranoia. It had kept her alive through 5 years of hunting dangerous people. Right now, every instinct was telling her they were being manipulated. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. "Don't trust her," the text read. "Begović is not what she seems. Check her real employment records." Mila showed the message to Amela, watching her reaction carefully. The older woman's face went pale, then flushed with anger. 23 years, she said quietly. 23 years I've been hunting this monster, and now someone wants to destroy that with lies. They're just text messages. Could be anyone. Could be Marić himself, or his associates. You think war criminals operate in isolation? There's a whole network helping people like him stay hidden. It was plausible, but Mila's training demanded verification. "I need to make some calls. Check your story. Confirm your identity. Go ahead. But do it fast. Every minute we waste here is a minute Marić gets closer to disappearing forever." Mila stepped into the hallway and dialed a secure number she'd memorized but hoped never to use. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. "Novak." "It's Milena. I need a priority background check." There was a pause. Stefan Novak had been her handler during her ICC days, before she'd gone freelance. They'd maintained contact through encrypted channels, but voice calls were reserved for emergencies. "You're supposed to be deep cover in New York." "I am. But something's gone wrong. I need verification on Amela Begović, Sarajevo refugee, currently living Manhattan Upper East Side." She could hear typing in the background. Stefan was good at his job, probably the best intelligence analyst the ICC had ever employed. If anyone could cut through bureaucratic records and find the truth, it was him. Initial search shows employment. Records for building services company. Social Security number matches immigration records from 1999. Medical insurance claims consistent with cancer diagnosis. What about family? Husband and children killed in Bosnia. More typing. A longer pause. "Milena, there's no record of Amela Begović losing family members in the Trebinje massacre. In fact, according to UN refugee documentation, she entered the United States as a single woman with no dependents." The hallway suddenly felt cold. That's impossible. She knew details about the tribunal, about Marić's involvement. Details that were published in newspapers and court records. Publicly available information. Mila's mind raced through the implications. "Stefan, I need everything you have on her. Employment, banking, travel records, everything. This is going to take time. Can you maintain your position until—" "There is no time. Marić is leaving tonight, and if Begović isn't who she claims to be, then this whole thing could be—" The apartment door opened behind her. Amela stood in the doorway, and she was holding a gun. "Hang up," she said quietly. Mila calculated distances and angles. The hallway was too narrow for evasive movement, and Amela was positioned perfectly to control the situation. Professional positioning, not the stance of a traumatized refugee with a grudge. "Stefan, I need to call you back," she said into the phone. "Milena, don't." She ended the call and faced the woman who had just transformed from potential partner to definite threat. "Who are you?" Mila asked. "The same question I was going to ask you." Amela's gun was steady, held in a proper two-handed grip. "Mila Kovač, former ICC investigator, currently wanted by Serbian authorities for questioning in connection with 3 unsolved murders." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" "Goran Radic found dead in his Belgrade apartment 6 months ago. Officially ruled a heart attack, but neighbors reported seeing a woman matching your description in the building that day. Similar reports from Mila Kovač in Zagreb and Alexander Jovanović in Vienna. All of them war criminals. All of them conveniently dead before they could be brought to trial." Mila's throat went dry. The 3 names were indeed on her target list, but she'd never gotten close enough to any of them to attempt capture. Someone else had been there first. "I didn't kill those men. Maybe, maybe not. But someone did, and they're using your identity to do it." Amela gestured with the gun toward the apartment, inside. "We need to figure out what's really going on here." As they moved back into the living room, Mila's phone buzzed again. This time it was Stefan calling back. "Answer it," Amela said. "Speakerphone." Mila reluctantly complied. Stefan's voice filled the room, tight with concern. "Milena, I've got bad news. Amela Begović died in a car accident in New Jersey 3 weeks ago. Whoever you're with, it's not her." The woman who wasn't Amela Begović smiled grimly. "Thank you for confirming my suspicions, Mr. Novak. This is Agent Sarah Chen, Interpol Special Operations. I've been tracking your friend here for 6 months." The room spun around Mila. Everything she thought she knew was wrong, and now she was trapped with an Interpol agent who believed she was a serial killer. "I can explain everything," she said. "I'm sure you can. But first, we need to talk about tonight's operation. Because Dragan Marić isn't going anywhere. He's been dead for 2 years." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. "Mila." stared at the woman she'd known as Amela Begović, trying to process the revelation that her target had been dead for 2 years and she was apparently being hunted by Interpol for murders she didn't commit. "Show me your identification," Mila said finally. Agent Chen reached slowly into her jacket and produced an Interpol badge and ID. The credentials looked genuine, but Mila had seen expertly forged documents before. In her line of work, paranoia was a survival skill. If Marek is dead, who have I been watching for 6 months? That's what we've been trying to figure out. Chen set her weapon down but kept it within reach. "The man you know as David Henderson is actually Nikola Vasić, former intelligence operative with the Serbian state security. He's been using Marek's identity for the past 18 months. The pieces were starting to fit together in ways Mela didn't like. Using it for what? Bait. To draw up vigilantes like you who've been systematically killing war criminals across Europe." Mila felt sick. "I didn't kill anyone. I'm an investigator, not an assassin." "Then explain this." Chen pulled out a tablet and showed her a series of photographs, crime scenes, bodies, police reports. Each victim was someone from Mila's target list. Each death had occurred in cities she'd visited during her investigations. "This is impossible. I was nowhere near Belgrade when Radic died. Your credit card was used at a hotel 3 blocks from his apartment the night before he was found." "That's not." Mila stopped. She remembered Belgrade, remembered the frustrating week spent chasing false leads and dead ends. She'd stayed at the Hotel Moskva, charged everything to her Mila Kovač credit card. But she'd never gotten within 5 miles of Goran Radic. "Someone's been following my movements," she said slowly, "using my presence in these cities to provide cover for murders. That's one theory. The other is that you're exactly what the evidence suggests. A vigilante who's decided that legal justice takes too long." Mila's phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "Look outside. 3rd floor across the street. Tell Chen to check her messages." Both women moved to the window. In the building across the street, a figure was visible in a 3rd floor window, holding what looked like a rifle with a scope. Chen's phone immediately started ringing. She glanced at the screen and answered. "Chen here." Even from across the room, Mila could hear the urgent voice on the other end. "Sarah, you need to get out of there now. The apartment is being watched by an unknown sniper. We've got teams moving to your location," but the window exploded inward in a shower of glass and wood splinters. Both women dove for cover as a second shot punched through the wall where Chen had been standing moments before. "Sniper!" Chen shouted into her phone as she grabbed her weapon. "Officer needs assistance. Shots fired." Mila was already moving, staying low as she made her way toward the back of the apartment. Years of training kicked in automatically. Assess the threat, find cover, locate escape routes. The shots were coming from the southeast, which meant the fire escape on the north side might be clear. "This way." She called to Chen, who was pressed against the wall beside the shattered window. "I'm not going anywhere with you until..." A third shot took out the overhead light, plunging them into semi-darkness. Chen apparently decided that survival trumped procedure and followed Mela toward the rear of the apartment. The fire escape was a rickety metal structure that swayed alarmingly under their weight. 3 flights down to the alley, exposed and vulnerable for 20 seconds that felt like hours. Mila expected to feel a bullet between her shoulder blades at any moment. They reached the ground running and didn't stop until they were 6 blocks away, huddled in the doorway of a closed electronics store. "Your people," Mila panted. "How long?" "Until they get to the apartment? 5 minutes, maybe less." Chen was checking her weapon, counting rounds. "But whoever was shooting at us is long gone by now." "Not us, you. Those shots were meant for you specifically. Someone wanted to stop you from questioning me." Chen considered this. "Why would someone want to protect a suspected serial killer? Because I'm not the serial killer, I'm the patsy." The pieces were finally clicking into place for Mila. Someone's been using my investigations as cover for their own agenda, following my movements, killing my targets, leaving just enough evidence to make me look guilty. To what end? I don't know yet. But I think tonight's operation was designed to be the final frame. Me and Amela Begović attempting to kidnap an innocent man we believed was a war criminal. Except you're not really Begović, and the target isn't really Marek. Chun's phone rang again. She answered quickly. Chun ... What do you mean gone? The entire apartment. Are you sure? She hung up and turned to Mila with a grim expression. The sniper's position is empty. No shell casings. No fingerprints. Professional cleanup. And the apartment? Cleared out. All the evidence, the wall of photos, everything. Like no one was ever there. They stood in silence, processing the implications. Someone had orchestrated the entire encounter, from the initial text message to the sniper attack to the cleanup. It was a level of planning and resources that suggested serious organization. I need to make a call, Mila said. To who? Someone who might be able to tell us who we're really dealing with. She dialed Stefan's secure number again. This time he answered immediately. Milena, thank God. Are you safe? For now. Stefan, I need you to dig deeper into those murders. Look for connections beyond just the victims being on war crimes lists. What kind of connections? Financial, political, organizational. These weren't random killings. Someone's been systematically eliminating specific targets, and I think it's connected to something bigger than individual justice. Give me an hour. We may not have an hour. The man I thought was Dragan Marić, if he's really Nikola Vasić from Serbian intelligence, what would he want with war criminals? There was a long pause. Milena, if Vasić is involved, this isn't about justice. It's about secrets. War criminals know things, remember things. Names, locations, operations that were supposed to stay buried. The implication hit her like ice water. Someone's been cleaning house, eliminating witnesses, and using your investigation as cover, making it look like vigilante justice instead of systematic assassination. Shun had been listening to the conversation. Now she stepped closer, her expression thoughtful. If that's true, then tonight's operation wasn't about capturing a war criminal. It was about eliminating the two people who'd gotten closest to figuring out what was really happening. But we're still alive, Mila pointed out. For now, but whoever's behind this knows we're together, knows we've figured out part of their operation. They'll be coming for us. As if summoned by her words, Mila's phone buzzed with another text. Pier 47, South Street Seaport. 1 hour. Come alone, or a lot of innocent people die. This time there was an attachment, a photograph showing the interior of a crowded restaurant, with red crosshairs superimposed over a dozen random diners. They're escalating, Chun said grimly. No choice then. We try to end this. 5 minutes ago you thought I was going to arrest you. Mila looked at the Interpol agent, trying to read her intentions. Are you? Not until I know what's really going on. And definitely not until we stop whoever's been using your identity to commit murder. Chun checked her weapon again. Besides, I'm pretty sure my cover's blown anyway. Might as well see this through. They started walking toward the waterfront. Two women against an unknown enemy with unlimited resources and a willingness to kill anyone who got in their way. What's your real name? Mila asked as they walked. Sarah Chen, Interpol Special Operations. Based in Lyon. Been tracking these killings for 8 months. And you really thought I was the killer? The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Your presence at multiple crime scenes, your background in war crimes investigation, your apparent vigilante tendencies. It fit the profile, but you had doubts. Enough to investigate rather than just arrest. Good thing, considering how this has played out. They reached the South Street Seaport as the sun was setting over Manhattan. Pier 47 was at the far end, past the tourist attractions and dinner cruises. As they approached, Mila could see a figure waiting in the gathering darkness. It was the man she'd known as David Henderson, but his entire demeanor had changed. Gone was the shuffling elderly war criminal, replaced by someone alert, dangerous, and clearly in control of the situation. "Ms. Kovač," he called out as they approached. "And Agent Chen. How nice to finally meet you both properly." "Nikola Vasić," Chen said. It wasn't a question. "Among other names, yes. Though I prefer to think of myself as a problem solver. And you, both of you, have become quite problematic." Mila kept her hands visible but ready to move. The pier stretched out into the East River, with plenty of open water for bodies to disappear into. Not an ideal place for a confrontation. "What do you want?" she asked. "To offer you a choice. Walk away from this investigation, forget everything you think you've learned, and live your lives. Continue pursuing it, and join the others who've gotten too close to the truth." "What truth?" Vasić smiled, and for the first time, Mila saw the predator beneath the carefully constructed facade. That some secrets are worth any price to protect, and some people are worth any number of lives to silence. Behind him, more figures emerged from the shadows. Mila counted at least 6, all armed, all positioned to cut off escape routes. The trap was complete. "You know, I actually enjoyed our morning coffee chats," Vasić said conversationally, as if they weren't surrounded by armed killers on a deserted pier. "There's something refreshingly honest about pretending to be someone else with someone who's also pretending to be someone else. A mutual deception that almost felt like friendship." Mila kept her hands steady, though every nerve in her body screamed danger. Chen had shifted slightly to her left, creating distance and angles. Good tactical thinking. "How long have you known?" Mila asked. "That you were hunting me?" "Since your second week at the coffee shop. Your Serbian is too good, and you ask the kinds of questions only an investigator would think to ask. But more importantly, you carry yourself like someone who's seen violence. It's subtle, but I've been in this business for 30 years. And Agent Chen? I've known Sarah was Interpol since she first contacted me as Amela Begović. Lovely identity, by the way. The real Amela's death was quite convenient for our purposes." Chen's jaw tightened. "You killed her. Car accidents happen. Especially to people who ask too many questions about war criminals who are supposed to be dead." Vasić checked his watch with theatrical precision. "But we're getting ahead of ourselves. There's someone who wants to meet you both before we conclude tonight's business." A new figure stepped out of the shadows at the far end of the pier. Even in the dim light, Mila recognized him immediately from ICC files. General Ratko Mladek's former intelligence chief. A man who'd been declared dead in a NATO bombing raid in 1999. Colonel Dragan Marić was very much alive. "Ms. Kovač," Marić said in accented English as he approached. "Your grandmother would be so proud. Little Milena, all grown up and hunting war criminals just like her Babica always said she would." The world tilted around Mila. "You knew?" "My grandmother? Knew her? I gave the order that killed her." Kostik's smile was a slash of white in the darkness. Alexandra Kovač, age 67, executed along with 43 other civilians in Srebrenica. July 15, 1995. She died cursing my name and swearing her granddaughter would grow up to seek justice. Mila felt something fundamental break inside her chest. Her grandmother's death had been the driving force behind every choice she'd made for the past 15 years. Learning that her killer was standing 10 feet away, alive and smug, was almost too much to process. "Touching reunion," Chen said quietly. "But I'm guessing this isn't about family history." "Quite right, Agent Chen. This is about the future of international justice and the very inconvenient fact that you two have stumbled onto one of the most successful intelligence operations of the modern era." Kostic gestured to Vasić, who pulled out a tablet and showed them a series of photographs. Dead men in various locations, all of them former war criminals from Mila's target list. 18 months of careful work, Kostic continued. Tracking down every surviving member of my former command structure. Every soldier who participated in operations that NATO and the ICC would consider crimes against humanity, and eliminating them before they could be captured and questioned. You've been killing your own people, Mila said. I've been protecting state secrets that could destabilize the entire Balkan region if they came to light. Do you have any idea how many current political leaders were involved in wartime operations? How many NATO allies participated in activities they'd rather forget? Chen was studying the photographs on the tablet, the pattern. They weren't just war criminals, they were all witnesses to something specific. Very good, Agent Chen. They were all present for Operation Black Dawn, a joint Serbian-Russian intelligence operation that took place during the final months of the Kosovo conflict. An operation that involved significant cooperation from certain Western intelligence services. The pieces clicked into place for Mila. Someone in NATO was working with Serbian intelligence, feeding information, coordinating operations. Someone very high up in the command structure. Someone who's now in a position of considerable power within the European Union. Kostic's expression was almost paternal. The kind of revelation that could bring down governments, end careers, trigger international incidents. So you've been cleaning house, Chen said. Eliminating everyone who could testify about Western collaboration with war criminals, while simultaneously discrediting the international justice system by making it appear that vigilantes are systematically murdering potential witnesses. Quite elegant, really. Vasić stepped forward. Your investigations provided perfect cover. Miss Kovač. Every time you showed up in a city hunting a war criminal, we could eliminate our target and let you take the blame. Eventually, when enough evidence accumulated, you'd be arrested as a serial killer, discredited completely. Any testimony you might give about what you discovered would be dismissed as the ravings of a murderer trying to escape justice. But you made a mistake, Mila said. You got greedy. Too many kills in too short a time frame. That's what drew Interpol's attention. Actually, that was intentional, Chen said grimly. They wanted me to investigate. They wanted official attention focused on the vigilante angle rather than the possibility of organized assassination. Kostic nodded approvingly. Agent Chen is quite perceptive. Yes, we guided Interpol toward the vigilante theory while simultaneously feeding information to various intelligence services about a rogue ICC investigator who'd gone off the reservation. Multiple agencies hunting the same target, all convinced they were pursuing a dangerous criminal. Until tonight, when you planned to eliminate both of us and close the circle completely, Mila said. The plan was for you and Amela to confront the innocent Mr. Henderson, who would be forced to kill you both in self-defense. Tragic end to a case of mistaken identity. The surviving witness would testify that a crazed vigilante and a rogue Interpol agent had attacked an elderly refugee, confirming every suspicion about the breakdown of international law enforcement. If you like the story, please subscribe to my channel, except we figured out the deception, which forced us to accelerate our timeline. Not ideal, but manageable. Vasić raised his weapon. Around the pier, the other armed figures did the same. The sound of safeties clicking off echoed across the water. Any last words? Kostic asked with mock solicitude. Mila looked at Chen, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. They'd worked together for less than 4 hours, but some partnerships transcended time. Just one question, Mila said. How did you know my grandmother personally? Kostic's expression shifted, becoming genuinely puzzled. What do you mean? You described her death in very specific detail. Time, place, even what she said before she died. That's not the kind of information that appears in operational reports. I told you, I gave the order. No, you knew her, personally, before the war. Mila took a half step forward, gambling everything on a hunch. Which means you know that my grandmother wasn't just a random civilian. She was GRU, Soviet military intelligence, stationed in Yugoslavia in the 1980s. The silence that followed was so complete that the sound of water lapping against the pier seemed deafening. Impossible, Vasić said, but Kostik's face had gone pale. How could you possibly know that? Because she taught me 17 languages. Because she taught me surveillance techniques when I was 8 years old, disguised as games. Because she knew things about Eastern European intelligence operations that no civilian should have known. Mila smiled coldly. And because before she died, she left me something that I think you've been looking for. She reached slowly into her jacket and pulled out a small leather journal, weathered with age. Her operational diary. Every contact, every operation, every secret she learned during 15 years of deep cover work in Yugoslavia. Including detailed records of Operation Black Dawn and the Western intelligence officers who collaborated with Serbian forces. Kostik's eyes fixed on the journal like a hawk spotting prey. Give me that. No, but I'll make you a deal. Safe passage for Agent Chen and myself, and I'll tell you where the complete files are hidden. Kill us, and everything goes to every major newspaper and intelligence service in Europe within 72 hours. You're bluffing. Try me. The standoff stretched taut between them. Mila could feel Chen's tension beside her, could sense the armed men calculating angles and distances. Everything balanced on a knife's edge. Finally, Kostik spoke. What do you want? The truth. About my grandmother, about Operation Black Dawn, about who in the West was dirty, all of it, and in exchange? The location of the complete files, and my word that they'll never see the light of day. Your word isn't worth much, considering your profession. Then you'll have to decide whether the risk is worth it. Kostik studied her face in the dim light, looking for deception. Finally, he made a gesture to his men, who lowered their weapons fractionally. Very well. But if you're lying to me, Miss Kovač, your death will be considerably more unpleasant than a simple bullet. Understood. Your grandmother was recruited by Soviet intelligence in 1982, when she was working as a translator for the Yugoslav Ministry of Defense. Her assignment was deep penetration of NATO operations in the Balkans, with particular focus on identifying Western intelligence assets. Mila felt pieces of her family history clicking into place. The photography hobby. The traveling for work. The way she always seemed to know what was happening in Eastern Europe before it hit the news. She was very good at her job. So good that when Operation Black Dawn was conceived in 1998, she was the logical choice to serve as liaison between Serbian intelligence and our Russian contacts. What was Operation Black Dawn? Kostik hesitated, then seemed to decide that the truth was worth the risk. A joint operation to identify and eliminate Western intelligence assets who had penetrated too deeply into Serbian military operations. The goal was to create chaos within NATO command structure, while simultaneously protecting key Russian interests in the region. And it required Western cooperation. 3 senior officers in NATO intelligence were feeding information to Serbian forces throughout the Kosovo conflict. In exchange, we provided them with intelligence about Russian military movements and political intentions. Chen spoke for the first time in several minutes. Who were the Western officers? That information is worth more than safe passage. That information is worth everything. Tell us, Mila said. Kostik smiled. Ask your grandmother's diary. I'm sure she was thorough in her record keeping. He made another gesture, and his men began to withdraw into the shadows. You have 24 hours to produce the complete files, Miss Kovač. After that, we resume our original plan with significantly less pleasant methods. Within moments, the pier was empty except for Mila and Chun. Jesus Christ, Chun breathed. Do you really have your grandmother's operational files? No, Mila said. I have something better. I have the location of every safe house, every dead drop, every emergency cache she established during 15 years of deep cover work, including the one where she hid the evidence that could bring down half the intelligence establishment in Europe. And you're willing to trade that information? I'm willing to use it as leverage to end this once and for all. But first, we need to get off this pier before they change their minds about letting us live. As they hurried back toward the city lights, Chun asked the question that had been nagging at both of them. Why reveal all of this? Why not just kill us and be done with it? Because, Mila said, I don't think Colonel Kostic is the one really running this operation. I think he's just another asset, being managed by someone with much bigger stakes in keeping Operation Black Dawn secret. The Western intelligence officers, one of them anyway. Someone who's parlayed their wartime collaboration into serious political power. Someone who has the resources to run a multi-year assassination campaign while simultaneously manipulating multiple law enforcement agencies. Someone we need to identify before they identify us. Exactly. And I think I know where to start looking. They disappeared into the labyrinth of Lower Manhattan. Two hunters who had suddenly become the hunted, carrying secrets that could reshape the political landscape of Europe. Behind them, in the shadows of Pier 47, a figure watched them go through night vision binoculars. Then he made a phone call to a secure number in Brussels. It's confirmed, he said in accented English. She has the Alexandra files, and she knows how to use them. The voice on the other end was crisp, authoritative, and spoke with the slight inflection of someone who'd spent decades in international diplomatic circles. Eliminate her, tonight, and make it look like gang violence. We can't afford any more complications. The call ended, leaving only the sound of wind across the water and the distant hum of city traffic. The hunt was entering its final phase. The safe house was a third-floor walk-up in Chinatown, one of 6 emergency locations Mila maintained across the city. She'd learned from her grandmother's example, always have an exit strategy, always have backup identities, and never trust anyone completely. Chun sat at the small kitchen table, methodically cleaning her service weapon while Mila worked at a laptop. The events of the evening had forged an unlikely partnership between them, but both women remained on edge. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford. Tell me about your grandmother's cache, Chun said, without looking up from her gun. She was paranoid, even by intelligence standards. Every safe house had backup documentation, emergency funds, communication equipment. The kind of operational security that comes from 30 years of working in hostile territory. But you said she wasn't just Gru. What else was she? Mila paused her typing. She'd never told anyone the complete truth about her grandmother's past, not even Stefan. Some secrets were too dangerous to share. She was a triple agent. Soviet intelligence thought she was working for them. Yugoslav intelligence thought she was their asset. And the Americans thought she was feeding information to CIA. Christ. Who was she really working for? Herself, her family. The people who would die if the wrong information reached the wrong hands. Mila closed the laptop and faced Chun directly. She spent 15 years documenting war crimes, human rights violations, and intelligence operations from all sides. Not for any government, but because she believed someone needed to keep an accurate record. And that record is hidden somewhere in New York, Queens. A storage unit she rented under a false name in 1994, just before she died. I've been paying the rental fees for 20 years, waiting for the right moment to access it. Chun finished reassembling her weapon. What makes you think tonight is the right moment? Because we're out of options. Kostic and his people will be hunting us, Interpol. probably has a kill order out on both of us by now, and someone with serious political power wants us dead. The only leverage we have is information. Assuming your grandmother's files are still there. Assuming they contain what we need. Assuming we can get to them before. The window exploded inward in a shower of glass and splintered wood. Both. Women dove for cover as automatic weapons fire raked the apartment. Someone had found them. Mila rolled behind the kitchen counter, grabbing the go bag she always kept ready. Chun was pressed against the wall beside the destroyed window, returning. Fire with precise single shots. "How many?" Mila shouted over the gunfire. "At least 4. Professional positioning. They've got the building surrounded." More shots punched through the thin walls of the apartment. These weren't the careful, measured attacks from the pier. This was an elimination squad with orders to kill everyone inside. "Fire escape?" Chun asked. "Covered. I can see muzzle flashes from the building across the street. Then we go up." They made their way toward the narrow staircase leading to the roof, staying low as bullets shredded everything around them. The attackers were using high-powered rifles, the kind that could punch through multiple walls and still kill. The roof was flat concrete surrounded by a low parapet. Not much cover, but at least they could see their attackers. Muzzle flashes revealed positions on 3 adjacent buildings, a coordinated assault designed to leave no escape routes. Military precision. Chun observed, checking her ammunition. These aren't street criminals or even professional assassins. This is a tactical team, Serbian Special Forces? Or NATO, hard to tell at this range. Mila was studying the building across the street through a small pair of binoculars from her go bag. "I count 6 shooters, all equipped with night vision. And silenced weapons. Someone with serious resources wants us very dead. Options? Limited. We can try to hold out until police respond to the gunfire, but in this neighborhood, response time could be 20 minutes. We can try to break through. Their perimeter, but that's basically suicide. Or ... or what? We give them what they think they want." Mila pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized years ago, but never used. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. "Yes, Colonel Kostic, this is Mila Kovač. Your people are shooting up half of Chinatown trying to kill me. My people are in Brooklyn, Ms. Kovač. If someone is shooting at you, it's not us." The denial in his voice sounded genuine, which meant they were dealing with a third party. Someone else who wanted them dead. Then who? The same person who's been orchestrating this entire operation from the beginning. The same person who hired us to eliminate the Black Dawn witnesses. The same person who's been using you as an unwitting asset for 18 months. Another burst of gunfire peppered the roof around them. Chun grabbed Mila's arm and pulled her behind an air conditioning unit. "I need a name," Mila said into the phone. "I need the location of your grandmother's files." "Deal, but if you're lying to me, I'll use my last breath to make sure those files reach every intelligence service in NATO." There was a long pause. When Kostic spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a man who'd run out of options. "Deputy Director Marcus Webb, NATO Intelligence Division. Currently stationed in Brussels. He was our primary contact during Operation Black Dawn, and he's been managing this cleanup operation since 2019. Why? Because he's been nominated for Secretary General of NATO. The confirmation hearing is next week. If the Black Dawn files become public, his career is over. More than that, half the current NATO command structure would be implicated in war crimes. So he's willing to kill anyone who might expose him. Anyone and everyone, including his former Serbian contacts, once we've served our purpose." The gunfire was intensifying. Chun was returning fire sporadically, trying to conserve ammunition, while keeping their attackers from advancing. "The files are in a storage unit in Queens," Mila said quickly. Facility called Safekeep Storage on Northern Boulevard. Unit 247, rented under the name Katharina Novak. The key is taped under the sink in apartment 4B at 1247 East 23rd Street. And in exchange? Get us out of here alive and help us get to Brussels. Impossible. Webb has resources we can't match. Then, we all die, and the files go public anyway. I've got dead man switches in place, Kostik. If I don't check in every 24 hours, everything gets released to every major news organization in Europe. Another pause. Then, there's a service tunnel that runs under your building. Access through the basement laundry room. Follow it east for 3 blocks, then surface through the subway maintenance hatch at the corner of Mott and Canal. And then, car. We'll be waiting. Blue sedan, license plate starting with NYG. Driver will take you to a safe location where we can discuss terms. How do I know this isn't a trap? Because Ms. Kovač, you and I are now on the same side. Neither of us wants to see Deputy Director Webb become the most powerful man in NATO. The call ended. Chun looked at Mila with a mixture of admiration and concern. Please tell me you have a better plan than trusting Serbian war criminals. I have the beginning of a plan. Whether it's better remains to be seen. They made their way down to the basement, following Kostik's directions through a maze of pipes and electrical conduits. The service tunnel was exactly where he'd said it would be, a narrow concrete passage that smelled of decades of accumulated moisture and neglect. 20 minutes later, they emerged through a subway grate into the controlled chaos of Canal Street. The blue sedan was waiting exactly as promised. The driver was a young woman who spoke English with a slight Serbian accent. She said nothing during the 40-minute drive to a warehouse in Queens, but Melon noticed she took a circuitous route. Designed to identify and evade surveillance, the warehouse was mostly empty except for a few scattered shipping containers. Kostik was waiting for them, along with Vasić and 2 other men Mila didn't recognize. Ms. Kovač. Agent Chun, welcome to the Resistance. Resistance? Chun asked. Against Deputy Director Webb and the network of intelligence officials who've been covering up war crimes for 25 years. Turns out we're not the only ones who want to see justice done. He gestured to a man standing in the shadows. As he stepped into the light, Mila recognized him immediately from ICC files. General Ratko Mladic, she breathed. Actually, the man said in perfect English, Colonel James Morrison, U.S. Army Intelligence, retired. I've been playing the role of Mladic for the past 6 years as part of a deep cover operation to identify NATO officials who collaborated with war criminals. The world shifted around Mila again. Nothing was what it seemed, your American intelligence was, until I discovered that some of my own colleagues were not only collaborating with war criminals, but actively protecting them from prosecution. At which point I decided to go freelance. And you've been working with Serbian intelligence, using Serbian intelligence. There's a difference. Kostik and his people want revenge against the NATO officials who betrayed them. I want justice for the war crimes that were committed with American knowledge and consent. Chun was studying Morrison with professional interest. What's your plan? Simple. We expose Webb and his network before he can be confirmed as NATO Secretary General. We present evidence to the right people at the right time in a way that can't be ignored or buried. And if Webb tries to stop us? Morrison smiled grimly. Then we make sure he joins his co-conspirators in the kind of permanent retirement he's been arranging for everyone else. Mila felt the familiar weight of moral complexity settling on her shoulders. She'd started this hunt looking for simple justice war criminals brought to trial, victims finally vindicated. Instead, she'd stumbled into a web of competing intelligence, operations, political conspiracies, and moral ambiguities that made her original mission seem naive. What do you need from us? She asked. Access to your grandmother's files. And your testimony about everything Webb's people have done to frame you for murder. In exchange for safe passage to Europe, new identities, and the chance to see Deputy Director Marcus Webb answer for 25 years of war crimes. Outside the warehouse, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. Somewhere in Brussels, a man who'd spent decades protecting war criminals was waking up to prepare for what he thought would be his final ascension to power. He had no idea that his past was about to catch up with him. The storage unit in Kosovo, Queens, contained 15 years of secrets that could reshape the intelligence landscape of Europe. Mila stood among the carefully organized boxes and files, feeling the weight of her grandmother's legacy. Every document had been meticulously labeled, cross-referenced, and preserved in acid-free containers. Jesus, Morrison breathed, scanning. The contents. This is a complete intelligence archive. Financial records, operational orders, photographs, communication intercepts. Your grandmother was more thorough than most government agencies. Chun was examining a box labeled Blatt DAWN, NATO Liaison. Inside were hundreds of documents detailing meetings, money transfers, and operational coordination between Serbian intelligence and 3 NATO officers. Deputy Director Webb was just a major back then, she said, holding up a photograph. But he was already taking money from Serbian intelligence in exchange for operational intelligence. How much money? Kostic asked. $2.7 million. Over 18 months. Paid into a Swiss account under the name Michael Watson. Vasic was reading through operational orders with growing amazement. He didn't just provide intelligence. He actively participated in planning operations that resulted in civilian casualties, including the massacre at Trebinje, Morrison said grimly. The one where your grandmother died, Mila. Webb provided the intelligence that made that operation possible. The revelation hit Mila like a physical blow. Her grandmother had been killed with intelligence provided by the man who was about to become the most powerful military official in NATO. We need to get this to Brussels, she said quietly. All of it. Agreed. But Webb has resources we don't. Private military contractors, intelligence assets in multiple countries, political connections. At the highest levels. Morrison closed the file he'd been reading. If we try to expose him through normal channels, we'll be dead before the first newspaper hits the stands. Then we don't use normal channels, Chun said. We use the confirmation hearing. Explain. Webb's nomination for NATO Secretary General requires confirmation by the North Atlantic Council. That hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning in Brussels. Every major news organization in Europe will be covering it, and the proceedings are broadcast live. You want to ambush him during his own confirmation hearing? I want to present evidence in a forum where it can't be ignored, suppressed, or buried, where killing the witnesses would be impossible because the entire world is watching. Morrison considered this. It would require getting the evidence to someone with standing to present it during the hearing. Someone with credibility and access. I know someone, Mila said. Stefan Novak, my former handler at the ICC. He's testified before NATO committees before, and he has the legal authority to present evidence of war crimes. Can you contact him securely? Yes, but we'll need to get this evidence to him without Webb's people intercepting it. Leave that to us, Kostic said. We have resources Webb doesn't know about. 6 hours later, they were aboard a private cargo flight from JFK to Brussels. The aircraft was registered to a Serbian shipping company. That Morrison had assured them was completely off the books. Mila tried not to think too hard about what that meant. The evidence from her grandmother's archive filled 3 reinforced cases, each one containing enough documentation to end multiple careers and trigger international incidents. Webb's financial records, operational orders, photographs of meetings with Serbian intelligence officers, transcripts of conversations where he discussed targeting civilian populations. You realize, Chen said as they flew over the Atlantic, that exposing Webb means exposing the entire network of officials who collaborated with him. This won't just end his career, it'll trigger the biggest intelligence scandal since the Cambridge Five. Good, Mila replied. Maybe it's time for accountability. And maybe it's time for you to consider what comes after, Morrison said. When this is over, what's your plan? You can't go back to hunting war criminals. Half the intelligence services in Europe will want you dead for what you know. It was a question Mila had been avoiding. For 5 years, her entire identity had been built around the hunt for justice. Without that mission, she wasn't sure who she was supposed to be. I'll figure it out when Webb is in custody. If Webb goes into custody, there's a chance he'll try to run when he realizes what's happening. Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance. The cargo plane touched down at Brussels Airport at 3:47 a.m. local time. They were met by a convoy of vehicles that Kostic had arranged through channels Mila preferred not to examine too closely. Within an hour, they were in a safe house on the outskirts of the city, reviewing final preparations for the morning's operation. Stefan Novak arrived at dawn, looking haggard and concerned. Mila hadn't seen him in person for 2 years, and he'd aged considerably in that time. "Milena," he said, embracing her carefully. "When I got your message, I thought it was a trap." "It might be. Are you willing to risk it? To expose a war criminal who's about to become NATO Secretary General?" "Yes," she handed him the first case of evidence. "Everything you need is in here. Financial records, operational orders, witness statements. Enough to prove that Marcus Webb actively participated in war crimes during the Kosovo conflict." Stefan opened the case and began scanning the documents. His expression grew increasingly grim as he read. "This is comprehensive, but presenting it during the confirmation hearing will be difficult. I'll need to establish my credentials, present the evidence in a way that can't be dismissed, and do it all before Webb's security people can intervene." "Long do you need?" 10 minutes. "Maybe 15 if I can hold their attention." "You'll have it," Morrison said. "We'll make sure of that." At 8:30 a.m., they made their way toward NATO headquarters. The confirmation hearing was scheduled to begin at 10 o'clock, with preliminary proceedings starting an hour earlier. Stefan would enter through the main entrance as an accredited observer. The rest of them would position themselves around the building, ready to act if Webb tried to flee. "Remember," Morrison said as they separated, "Webb doesn't know we're here. As far as he's concerned, this is just another routine confirmation hearing. We want to keep it that way until Stefan begins his presentation." Mila took position across the street from the main entrance, with a clear view of anyone entering or leaving the building. Chun was positioned at the rear exit, and Morrison had somehow gained access to the building's security control room. At 9:15, a black sedan pulled up to the main entrance. Deputy Director Marcus Webb stepped out, looking confident and relaxed. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Mila studied his face through binoculars, comparing it to the photographs from her grandmother's files. 25 years older, but unmistakably the same man who'd taken Serbian money in exchange for intelligence that killed civilians. "Target confirmed," she said into her radio. "Webb is in the building." "Copy that," Morrison replied. "Stefan is in position. Hearing begins in 30 minutes. The longest 30 minutes of Mila's life crawled by. She watched diplomats and officials enter the building, watched security teams patrol the perimeter, watched the international news crews setting up their equipment. Finally, her radio crackled to life. "Stefan is beginning his presentation," Morrison sighed. "It's time." The NATO hearing room fell silent as Stefan Novak approached the podium, carrying a briefcase that contained 25 years of suppressed evidence. Mila watched through the security feed that Morrison had patched into her phone, seeing Webb's face for the first time as he realized what was happening. "Honorable members of the North Atlantic Council," Stefan began, his voice calm and professional. "I am Stefan Novak, senior prosecutor with the International Criminal Court. I appear before you today to present evidence that Deputy Director Marcus Webb is not qualified for confirmation as NATO Secretary General." Webb leaned forward in his chair, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. Behind him, Mila could see security personnel moving toward the exits, but Morrison's people were already in position. "The evidence I am about to present documents systematic collaboration between Deputy Director Webb and Serbian intelligence services during the Kosovo conflict of 1998 and 1999. This collaboration resulted in war crimes, civilian casualties, and a pattern of criminal behavior that continues to this day." Stefan opened his briefcase and removed the first set of documents. Webb stood up, but two NATO security officers gestured for him to remain seated. In June of 1998, then Major Marcus Webb entered into a financial agreement with Colonel Dragan Marić of Serbian intelligence. In exchange for $2.7 million paid into a Swiss account under the false name Michael Watson, Webb provided detailed intelligence about NATO military operations, civilian evacuation routes, and humanitarian aid convoys. The hearing room erupted in shocked murmurs. Webb's face had gone pale, but he remained in his seat, apparently calculating his options. This intelligence was used to plan attacks on civilian targets, including the massacre at Trebinje on July 15, 1999, where 237 civilians were executed by Serbian forces using intelligence provided by Major Webb. Stefan produced a photograph and held it up for the cameras. This photograph shows Deputy Director Webb meeting with Serbian intelligence officers in Belgrade on July 10, 1999, 5 days before the Trebinje massacre. The meeting was documented by Soviet intelligence operative Aleksandra Kovač, who maintained detailed records of all parties involved in what was designated Operation Black Dawn. Webb finally spoke. "This is preposterous. I categorically deny. The financial records are quite clear, Deputy Director Webb." Stefan produced another document. Swiss bank account number 4479215788834, opened June 15, 1998, under the name Michael Watson. Initial deposit of $400,000 from Serbian National Bank account number. Enough. Webb stood up, his composure finally cracking. "This is a deliberate smear campaign designed to undermine NATO at a critical moment in European security. The bank records are accompanied by audio recordings of your conversations with Serbian intelligence officers." Stefan continued imperturbably. "Would you like me to play them for the committee?" For the first time, real fear crossed Webb's face. "You can't have recordings. Any such recordings would be inadmissible. In a court of law, perhaps. But this is a confirmation hearing, not a criminal trial. The standard of evidence is considerably lower." Stefan nodded to the technical staff, who began setting up audio equipment. Webb looked around the room desperately, as if searching for an escape route. "I demand an immediate recess," he said. "I need to consult with legal counsel, the committee." "We'll hear the evidence," the chairman said firmly. "Please proceed, Mr. Novak." The first recording was crystal clear, Webb's voice discussing targeting priorities with Serbian officers, specifically mentioning civilian evacuation routes that should be disrupted to maximize psychological impact. The second recording was even more damning, Webb providing specific coordinates for a Red Cross convoy, coordinates that were later used in an attack that killed 12 aid workers and 37 refugees. As Webb's voice filled the hearing room, describing humanitarian workers as legitimate military targets, the deputy director made his move. He lunged toward the side exit, but Chun was waiting for him in the corridor. "Going somewhere, Deputy Director?" she asked, her Interpol credentials clearly visible. Webb's hand moved toward his jacket, but Morrison appeared behind him, pressing the barrel of a pistol against his spine. I wouldn't, Morrison said quietly. Too many witnesses, too many cameras. Your career in wet work is over, Marcus. Back in the hearing room, Stefan was presenting the final piece of evidence, a video. Recording from 1999, showing Webb personally interrogating captured civilians before their execution. This footage was recovered from Serbian intelligence archives, Stefan announced. It shows Deputy Director Webb not merely providing intelligence to war criminals, but actively participating in war crimes himself. The chairman of the North Atlantic Council stood up, his face ashen. This hearing is suspended pending a full investigation. Deputy Director Webb's nomination is withdrawn, and I am ordering his immediate detention pending formal charges. Webb's shoulders sagged in defeat as NATO security officers placed him in restraints. 25 years of careful career building, political maneuvering, and cover-ups had been destroyed in 15 minutes of testimony. You have no idea what you've done, he said to Stefan as he was led away. The networks I protected, the operations I safeguarded, this will unravel everything. Good, Stefan replied. Some things deserve to be unraveled. Mila sat in a cafe in Prague, reading the morning headlines on her tablet. Webb's trial was front-page news across Europe, with new revelations emerging daily about the scope of his criminal network. 14 senior NATO officials had been arrested, 3 governments had fallen, and the entire structure of European intelligence cooperation was being rebuilt from the ground up. Her phone buzzed with a text from Chun, who was now heading the joint Interpol ICC task force investigating war crimes. Coffee later? I'm buying. Another message came from Morrison. New case in Southeast Asia. Interested? And finally, one from Stefan. The Kovač Foundation for War Crimes Documentation is officially approved. Your grandmother would be proud. Mila smiled and closed the tablet. She decided to leave the hunting to others now. There were enough people seeking justice through proper channels. Enough momentum to ensure that war criminals could no longer hide in plain sight. She thought of her grandmother, of all the secrets carefully preserved in that storage unit, of the long chain of events that had led from a massacre in Bosnia to a confirmation hearing in Brussels. Justice was rarely linear, rarely simple, but sometimes, just sometimes, it was inevitable. The barista behind the counter called her name, and Mila stood to collect her coffee. Ethiopian Yurgachev, she noted automatically. Some habits died hard, but as she walked toward the counter, she noticed something interesting. The man at the corner table, reading a Serbian newspaper, had the same cold gray eyes she'd seen in too many war crimes tribunals. Old habits really did die hard. Mila smiled and approached the counter, already planning her next move. After all, Prague was lovely this time of year, and she'd always wanted to practice her Czech. Some stories never really ended, they just found new chapters. Creating stories of this scope and depth requires extensive research, careful plotting, and attention to every detail, from the authentic details of intelligence operations to the emotional journeys of our characters. When you invest your time in listening to these epic narratives, you're not just hearing a story. You're experiencing a complete literary world. If this story has kept you engaged, surprised you with its twists, or made you think about justice, accountability, and the price of secrets, please show your support by hitting that like button. Your likes tell us that you value detailed, immersive storytelling that doesn't take shortcuts or settle for simple plots. Subscribe to our channel if you want more epic tales like this. One stories that respect your intelligence, reward your attention, and take you on genuine adventures. We're committed to creating content that stands apart from the quick, disposable entertainment that dominates so much media today. Share this story with friends who appreciate great storytelling, complex characters, and narratives that explore real themes about justice, identity, and moral complexity. The best stories are meant to be shared, discussed, And remember, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest epic adventures. We're already working on our next novel-length story. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for taking this journey with Mila, Chun, and all the complex characters who inhabit this world of secrets and justice. Your attention is the greatest compliment any storyteller can receive.